My aspens dear, whose airy cage is quelled or quenched in leaves the leaping sun, all felled are all felled, of a fresh and following folded rank, not spared, not one that dandled a sandaled shadow that swam or sank on meadow and river and wind-wandering weed winding bank. Oh, if we but knew what we do when we delve or hew, hack and rack the growing green, since country is so tender to touch, her being so slender that like this sleek and seeing wall, but a prick will make no eye at all. Where we mean to mend her, we end her. When we hew or delve, aftercomers cannot guess the beauty being. 10 or 12, only 10 or 12 strokes of havoc, unselved, the sweet especial scene, rural scene, sweet especial rural scene. Binsey Poplars was inspired by the felling of a row of poplars, a deciduous plant native to the northern hemisphere, in Binsey, a village in Oxfordshire by the River Thames. It is written as a lament for the trees that have been axed by man, in that it also explores the complex and often selfish relationship that humankind shares with nature, one that is driven by greed, with little thought for what it leaves behind. The poem is interesting in many ways, but that it makes use of an epigraph, a short phrase at the start of a literary work, to suggest its theme is what stands out to me, because it might as well be an epitaph, a short message written on the headstone of the dead. The rhythm and rhyme are rather irregular, a hallmark of Hopkins, but the poem clearly had an effect because the internet says, and I like to believe, they were replanted. It is a lament, a passionate expression of grief and sorrow, written in sprung rhythm, a style created by Hopkins and intended to resemble the natural flow of speech. Repetition works to good effect both in creating rhythm and adding a dramatic flair, almost like a chant of the grieving. There is no rigid syllabic count or rhyme scheme to conform to, and that is what makes it a spontaneous outpouring. The poet mourns the felled aspens that tame the sunlight by snaring it between their leaves. He grieves over their axing, over the fact that not one was spared, over the fact that the shadows they cast in the lake that passed them by would exist no longer. He wonders why man doesn't realize the repercussions of hacking through all of nature, and this act of him is made to look even more gruesome by personifying nature as a delicate lady who needs to be treated with kindness and not reckless abandon. According to the poet, even the littlest action would leave her irrevocably changed, much like even the littlest prick to the eyeball leaves it forever wounded. The poet is so grief-stricken that he believes even if they were all planted again, those that happened on Binsey years down the line would never guess the beauty that was once there. The axe strokes have wreaked havoc on a beautiful rural scenery. The poem is the perfect elegy for lost trees, with undertones of hysterical grief, invented words to articulate them, and images that evoke violence. The poem is a good example of the way Hopkins would choose, alter, and even invent words with a view to the sonorousness of the poem. In describing the beauty of the aspens, he focuses more on how they interacted with and affected the space around them. The pricked eyeball makes for a startling image. He wants to make the loss feel personal, and that is accomplished by suggesting the loss of natural beauty from sight is as bad as losing sight itself. These were times when industrial development was seizing and assaulting the world. Trees gave way for buildings and meadows became factories. What is perhaps tragic is that more than 130 years later, we are still waging wars against the very same assault. And yet, every day that we keep the fight alive is a service for those of the future decades. At the end of the day, even if they'll never know what beauty thrived there, they'll at least have the chance to imagine it.